The Food and Drug Act requires ingredients to be listed on packaged food products. It says nothing about moisture or the percentage of ingredients. As a result, in the case of all meat sausage, the percentage of lean meat can be as low as 6%. 50-something can be fat, 30-something moisture, about a half for spices, and you end up with 6% meat in all meat sausage. Sausage is the worst product in the meat line, but weenies can be up to half fat and moisture, and some rather alarming amounts there simply because the percentage is not required. Another fraud that's very common in the repair industries, primarily televisions, cars, and all, is the gimmick called lowballing, where they look the piece of equipment over and decide that this is wrong and that is wrong, and it should be, well, I give you an estimate of this amount. And then when they get the mechanics lien on it, which gives them the legal ownership of the thing, all of a sudden they add on a whole lot more, and your bill goes from a water pump to a new transmission in no time. And this is purely an enforcement problem that in many areas the district attorney's office has obtained cars that are used, look used, but are in fantastic shape except for one or two items, and simply wheel them in there and wait for the vendor to take the bait. Mm-hmm. And when they take the bait, boom, then the consumer gets protection. But I haven't encountered any of that going on around here lately.
City like Dallas, who has not reached that total point yet, what do's and don'ts do you recommend?
Well, I hope the people of Dallas will really realize that I came in a neighborly fashion, and everything that's happened to me has been good, and I don't want to propose to say to Dallas what Dallas should do. This is one of the mistakes all of us are making, trying to tell the other what to do, but I think that in having had such a beautiful experience with Congressman Cabell and feeling so good about Dallas as I do, I would only want to say this: whatever you're doing, keep on doing it, but do look very carefully at the aggravating problems that are coming upon the cities now, and look at your problem comprehensively. I mean by that, particularly in the area, and this is what we're talking about so much, in the criminal area, I think we've neglected to understand systems. We've neglected to understand root causes, and I think that what happens, as I have experienced it, both having worked in New York, I directed the housing program, as you may know, there, and in Washington as mayor. These problems come upon you so fast, you're not psychologically equipped to deal with them. And we're finding that now. We're finding that in the area of narcotics, it's a fantastic problem, deep in its roots and scope, and we just weren't prepared for it. And I hope that any city that's not reached the point that some of the eastern cities have reached will begin to psychologically gear for what could happen.
It's been purely a matter of communication. The things go on, everybody first of all assumes it only happens to them. Then they figure, well, no, it's bound to happen to somebody else, but they have no idea who it is. And so there's been no way that you can really get organized together, sort of a fellowship of fellow victims, or this type of thing, in order to do something about it. And this is one of the things the Texas Consumers Association is wanting to do with our local organizations, is to provide this interchange of ideas, as well as through the state organization. What happens in El Paso could easily happen here.
When you talk about industry and businesses who are abusing the consumer, how many, are you talking about a great majority of the businesses, or how many?
At least not by intent. Now, in some areas, the competitive situation is so tight that the fact that one or two businesses will take unfair advantage of the consumer fairly well forces some of the others who would rather not, simply to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
In other areas, the competition isn't quite as tight, and so it stays more the minority. I think intrinsically it is a minority operation, though unfortunately in some areas they have enough leverage in the marketplace through this competitive advantage to force the others to be equally dishonest.
Do you know who these dishonest ones are?
Well, I know some of them.
What are the greatest holes in the president's proposals to fight crime?
Well, I don't know that I see any holes. I think the problem now is getting the resources. As he indicated, 13 bills have gone to Congress. None of them have passed at this point. I think the difficulty is not so much what the hole is, it's understanding the dimension of the problem. I think for the first time we're beginning to attack narcotics, which in our cities all over the nation now is because it's a serious problem. And I mean, we've been fighting it as if it didn't exist, really hitting a giant with a feather. Just in the narcotics area alone, the cities have now, and our city particularly, is coming to grips with it with a whole host of legislation, with a whole host of thrusts. I think that, from my standpoint, there are only two ways to get at this. One, to get the system and understand that it is a system and deal with it from law enforcement, from correctional reform and in terms of rehabilitation of inmates, assure speedy trials, which is constitutionally guaranteed, but most courts are not functioning, reform to some degree of your bail system, and to get all that cranking, and then at the same time recognize that there are root causes and try, as your resources will, to attack those root causes.